Hello and welcome back to today's episode of Caden's Take. I'm Caden, and today we are going to be discussing my thoughts on the White Sox coaching changes for 2020. Let's get into it. So, the first main change was that the White Sox parted ways, quote unquote, with the manager, Rick Renteria. Now, I said quote unquote because you really don't know if they parted ways, if Rick Renteria knew that at the end of this season he was gone. We don't know if he got fired, if it was a mutual thing, but what they are saying is that it is a mutual separation. Now, I don't know if the coach really wants to give up his job because you have to think about it like this. Rick Renteria had a team that was young with a lot of promise and that is going places like this season, hopefully the World Series, definitely the playoffs. Do you really think he wanted to give that up and be jobless? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Yes, he's older, but at the same time, he's not going to retire. He's going to have to go find a job somewhere else because yes, he's made enough money that he could technically retire, but at the same time, he only has had two coaching gigs with the Cubs and Sox, so it's very much likely that he's going to go find somewhere else to go have a managerial job or a bench coaching job, which is what he did for the White Sox several seasons with Ventura as our manager. Ventura, excuse me. Um, the other thing that you have to look at is that Rick Renteria couldn't really manage pitching. He did a good job putting the lineup together. You look at right field, the White Sox had Nomar Mazara in at the lefty, Adam Engel in at righty, according to the pitcher hand, and I think that's good. When that was the reason I didn't really like Joe Madden when he was on the Cubs, was he didn't really care about who's the best player. He cared about the lefty righty matchups. So he had every lefty in the lineup and every righty in the lineup that he possibly could. Didn't care who was playing, just who was pitching for the opponent. And I didn't really like that. Rick Renteria just did it with the right field spot because we had a left hitting right fielder and Nomar Mazara and a righty hitting right fielder and Adam Engel. And one was an incredible fielder, one was a decent hitter and a not so good fielder. And so you had to rotate him out. And so I think he did that well. But his pitching managerial skills were non existent, to say the least. You look at the playoffs in game two, or I'm saying game one, he left Giolito on in the seventh. Yes, the White Sox won that game, but after he let up the no hitter, he struggled the rest of the or perfect game. Excuse me, he had a perfect game going, and as soon as he let it up, he started immediately dropping and struggling. And Rick Renteria let him finish out the inning and go out in the eighth. Now, here's my personal opinion on it. The seventh inning, that's fine. Let him finish the inning, but go bring up your setup man in Aaron Bummer. Go bring in Calamay in the ninth, end the game. They brought him out for one batter. Somebody got on base. They pulled him. What was that? What was the point of that? Just let him be done. He pitched 7 flawless innings with no runs. Why'd you got to bring him in just to get somebody on base and then pull him? That made zero sense to me, and I did not like that move. Go to game two. He let Keuchel go way too long because Keuchel was struggling. And then after Keuchel was out, he really didn't do much with the pitching until he brought in Dylan Cease. Well, my problem with that is that you had Cease and you had Dunning, either of which could have gone in the third game. You throw one of them for 2 innings in the day before. That means they're pretty much out and non-existent unless if you throw them 1 inning the next day. And so I think he could have, since they're both young arms that didn't have pitching playoff experience, he could have saved Cease and had Cease and Dunning do the first 3 innings, one of them the first 3 innings, the other, and then you worry about the next 3. What he instead did was let Dane Dunning in the third game go for 2 batters. He walked the third. The fourth got on base, and then came up Matt Olson. So who came out to the mound? Rick Renteria to pull Dane Dunning and put in Garrett Crochet. I feel terrible for the kid that that's how he ended his career with the White Sox because he didn't deserve to go out in that moment. And the White Sox lost the game because Rick Renteria pulled the pitchers when they were in their high, and let the pitchers continue going when they were walking, like Matt Foster walked in 2 runs, or just letting hits go. And I understand Dane Dunning getting pulled wasn't a smart was the reason that wasn't a smart decision was, yes, he was struggling, but he's the starting pitcher and he's gotten 2 outs with 2 men on. You have to let him go. And then Garrett Crochet, he would have let him go further, but he got hurt, and so that was obviously he needed to pull him. So I originally, when they fired Rick Renteria, I was very happy about it, but because of who is their new coach, which we'll get to later, I don't know my thoughts on it anymore. So next up is Don Cooper. The one thing that I think is very underlooked or overlooked is that Don Cooper got let go the same day as Renteria did. Don Cooper was the White Sox pitching coach for the last 33 years. He served under 4 managers, including managing a 3-game stint himself after firing a manager back in 2000 or back in the 2000s. I don't remember which year exactly that was, but he had a 3-game series where he was the manager. He was also usually the guy that when Ventura or Guillen or Rentier got ejected, he would go be the new coach and he would manage the team well because he was good with managing the pitchers and he was good with working with the pitchers. Look at guys like Chris Sale, Jose Quintana, while with the Sox, in parentheses, and John Garland and Mark Burley. Well, I'm just going to bring up Chris Sale first. Chris Sale spent the first season of his White Sox career not as a starter like he had been in high school, college, in the minors, but he spent his first season out of the bullpen working with Don Cooper one-on-one out of the bullpen, and that helped him grow and develop even more as a pitcher into what he was and how incredible of a pitcher he was in the 2014, 15, 16 seasons. Don Cooper made him that good, and you can't take that away from Don Cooper. You look at guys like Mark Burley, who, yeah, Burley was a big name and did a lot of good pitching, but I don't think Burley would have been Burley without Don Cooper, his coach for his whole career with the Sox. John Garland was nobody until Don Cooper started working with him, and Jose Quintana even said on several occasions that his success was because of Don Cooper and his relationship with Don Cooper. My one comment, though, is that everybody's like, well, add Lucas Giolito to that list. You can't, because Lucas Giolito had his 2 struggling years with the Sox. Then in that offseason, he went to California and met up with his old pitching coach, Ethan Katz, who we'll talk about in a little bit, and worked with him in the offseason, and then came back in 2019 and this season in 2020 and pitched as good as he did. So I don't give Don Cooper any credit for Lucas Giolito, and you also have to look at guys like Dylan Cease, who started to improve at the end of this season, or Rolando Lopez, who hasn't been improving at all, and you have to say, well, what is Don Cooper doing to the team right now? So I think that firing him was a bad decision when they made it, but I think his replacement is a young guy in Ethan Katz who is going to do a lot of good for this pitching rotation, so I do like the move, but when it happened, I was very upset. So we're now on to the new White Sox manager, which is Tony La Russa. Tony La Russa was started with the White Sox in 1983. You've probably heard all those stories. He has had 11 Rookie of the Years under his managerial time, including guys like Ron Kittle, Mark McGwire, and even many more Hall of Famers. And he is a Hall of Fame inductee from 2014. And he has 3 rings and is the 3rd most winning coach in MLB history. All those stats are great, but the blaring ones and the scary ones I feel like are more alarming than those are good. Look at the fact that he's 76 and hasn't coached since 2011. He's older than the person that we just elected as president, and everybody was talking about how his health concerns are not okay. Now I understand President of the United States and coach of the White Sox are kind of different, just a little bit different. But at the same time, you have to look at, well, if those health concerns are there, then you have to think about his health concerns. And talking about health concerns, let's talk about his DUIs, because you know that everybody is asked that. Everybody, when they join the team, Adam Eaton, Lance Lynn, They go, Lance Lynn, what are your thoughts on La Russa and his DUIs? He goes, La Russa was the coach of me my first 2 seasons in 10 and 11. We won a World Series together. I hope to win another ring. Adam Eden, what did you think about Tony La Russa being your new head coach? Hands up the call. So there's mixed opinions, mixed thoughts, and we don't really know what people are or how this team is going to react to La Russa's DUIs, not even La Russa being the coach over Rentiera, because the former players, they had a great bond with Rentiera, and now you bring in a guy who is old, who has made several racist comments in his career, and who has continually gotten DUIs for drunk driving. I don't know how this White Sox locker room is going to react to it. And he's even said that that's not my concern. My concern is winning, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to win. And I think that we need proof of that for him to be accepted as this new White Sox coach. Even with the DUIs, he finally began pleading guilty a couple days ago, but you look at his stubbornness when the trial occurred and he got convicted back in 2007 for his first DUI. He said this was a terrible mistake, it will never happen again. Then in February when he got arrested, he was saying stuff like, this is my reign, I'm a Hall of Famer, bro, you can't arrest me. And you just think about the fact that he is irresponsible. He got the first time in 2007 was fell asleep at a stoplight. That's dangerous, but the second time was a lot worse because back in February, what his DUI was him drunk driving and he ran into a curb and his car was smoking, and that's how somebody saw him and found him. So you have to think of these major concerns and what's he going to do this season at spring training. We don't know, and he's definitely a risk and a hazard in that regard. And another thing that a lot of people says is it wasn't Han's decision. It was our owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, wanting to rekindle with his friend and trying to make up for his mistakes. And I think it's a mixture of of Jerry calling Tony and saying, I want you to be my next coach. Will you consider coming out of retirement? And then he goes, by the way, Rick's going to interview you and go through everything. And I think Han as the GM has to feel a little forced to definitely hire La Russa, be with that relationship and the fact that Jerry had to definitely pull some strings to get him to interview for this position, because he said La Russa said in the press conference that he's gotten job offers in the past, but he never thought of it seriously until this one. I don't think that's true. I think that he thought of it seriously because Reinsdorf, his buddy, wanted him to just take the call. So I don't know how invested he's going to be in this. I think the PR and the media is starting to drive him out. So I don't know really if he's going to be digested completely into this. But he has said that he is all about winning. So until he proves me otherwise, I'm going to put trust in him. But as soon as the White Sox start losing, or they don't have the morale, or they don't like him as their coach, then I'm back on the Russa hate train. So next up was they got a new bench coach, Steve Carrillo. So what happened was Nick Capra, our third base coach, he decided to leave and he left. And so Joe McWayne, the bench coach, moved back to being the third base coach. And we now have Carrillo at our bench coach. And I think Carrillo is a good fit for the Sox. He was a player with the Cardinals with with Lance Lynn and Tony La Russa, and so I think that I think definitely that he's going to be a good fit for us, and he's going to help us a lot because the relationship he has with players and coaches, and he's going to be, since he's a younger coach as well who has had success, he's also going to be a buffer between La Russa and the players if things get ugly. And I misspoke earlier, his name is Miguel Carrillo, my bad. So I definitely think that he's going to be a good fit at the bench coaching spot. So last up, we have Ethan Katz. Ethan Katz, I think, is the best move the White Sox have made in their coaching decisions. Let me tell you why. So there's 3 players. Their names are Lucas Giolito, who we all know, Max Fried, and Jack Flaherty. Those three pitchers all went to the same high school together at Westlake High School in California. Their pitching coach was Ethan Katz. Those three pitchers in 2020 together recorded a 15-6 record, 196 strikeouts, 190 or 168.2 innings pitched, 355 ERA, and a 111 WHIP. That is some pretty monster and dangerous and incredible stats. The other thing, and you have to look at Max Fried was on the first MLB team as well. Flaherty and Giolito didn't, but you know, Fried had a 7-0 record. That's part of the reason that he got on. And Flaherty was injured for the first part of the year, and Giolito was a finalist that didn't make it. So they all had contention in great seasons. But now here's the thing. You look at this season and those other stats. We had a shortened 60-game season, and they did great. Let's take a step back and look at their career stats between the three of them. 80-62 record. That's still pretty good. A 1,266 strikeouts, 1,179.1 innings pitched, 378 ERA, and a 121 WHIP. The ERA and the WHIP barely went up, and when you really look at the strikeout to innings pitched ratio, not only was there more strikeouts than innings pitched between the three of them this season, but in their careers they had less than 100 more strikeouts than innings pitched. So that's a little bit alarming that they aren't getting the strikeouts, but at the same time, they didn't all be getting coached by Ethan Katz these last couple of years. Ethan Katz helped them in high school. They all got drafted. Then they had their college coaches. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Ethan Katz worked with Giolito in the offseason and helped him personally improve, but he didn't help all three of them personally improve. So I definitely think that Ethan Katz connecting one-on-one with Lucas Giolito through the entire season will only make him better, and I think that he's going to make the other younger pitchers around Giolito better, something that Don Cooper failed to do. He came off of being the assistant pitching coach for the San Francisco Giants, and as the Giants' record was 29-31, their team ERA ranked 18th in the MLB with 4.64. Don Cooper's White Sox had a team ERA with 6th place with 3.81 in the MLB. His team, Ethan Katz's Giants, had 488 strikeouts, the 24th most, whereas the White Sox were tied with 14th with the Cubs and the Dodgers at 523. And the other stat is home runs allowed. So there's 30 MLB teams. His pitchers led up the 8th least home runs with 69 home runs on the season. The thing we also have to consider is that they were in San Francisco, and the San Francisco field is one of the biggest outside of Comerica and just Fenway for the Wall. And between those two, San Francisco is the third hardest to hit home runs. And I mean, there's others that are hard to hit home runs off of, like Coors Field and Dodger Stadium. But in San Francisco is definitely one of the three hardest stadiums to hit home runs. That's why everybody was saying Madison Bumgarner isn't as good of a pitcher once he leaves San Francisco and went to Arizona, not because he was getting older, but because he was leaving San Francisco, where he had been at his whole career with the bigger field and the longer outfield. And so I definitely think his pitchers benefited from that, but at the same time, his pitchers were doing decent. He had Kevin Gossman, and that was it. And his pitchers were in the middle of those stats. Now imagine he has a full bullpen, minus a closer, who I still think we need to get Liam Hendricks. He has a rotation that could use one more starter, but besides that is very solid and ready to go. And he's only going to make them better and only going to be able to improve this team. That is it for today's Caden's Take episode. I hope that you like this episode if you did. And if you would consider subscribing, that would mean a lot. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.